What happens when the man who called your unborn children genetically defective invites you to his televised wedding as a cruel joke, but you walk in as the Trillionaire CEO who just made his entire industry irrelevant with the 3 inferior geniuses he threw away? Welcome back to Korean Animated Stories by Jik. If you love emotional stories with shocking twists, hit subscribe now. The hospital bill arrived on the same day as the wedding invitation. Jeong stared at both pieces of paper spread across the cracked linoleum table of her basement apartment in Gyeongju, Seoul's industrial district, trying to calculate which crisis required attention first. The hospital bill, 12 million won for her daughter Jian's emergency surgery 3 weeks ago. Payment overdue. Final notice before collections. The wedding invitation, cream-colored paper so expensive she could feel its weight, embossed with gold lettering that seemed to mock the fluorescent overhead light flickering in her 200-square-foot underground home. Mr. Choi Hyun-woo and Miss Park Jung-hee, request the honor of your presence. Iyama, why is that fancy paper making you cry? Jeong looked up to find her 8-year-old daughter Jian standing in the doorway, her post-surgical bandage still visible beneath her worn pajamas. Behind her, the triplets' shared bedroom was silent, her other 2 children, Gunwoo and Gung-ho, still sleeping on the single mattress they shared on the floor. I'm not crying, sweetheart, Jeong lied, though her vision was blurred with tears. Yama is just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was drowning. 3 children. 3 mouths to feed on her wages from the convenience store and the late-night factory shifts. 3 futures she was failing to secure, no matter how many hours she worked or how little she slept. And now, the sad invitation from the man who had looked her in the eyes 9 years ago and said, "You're genetically inferior. I can't risk having defective children with someone like you." The man who had left her when she was 2 months expecting because his mother had discovered Jeong's family medical history: a grandmother with a minor heart condition, an uncle with managed epilepsy. Nothing serious, nothing that defined her family's worth. But to the Choi family, it was enough to brand her as contaminated bloodline. Hyun-woo had chosen his family's beliefs over her. And now, he wanted her to watch him marry someone from an acceptable genetic background. Jeong picked up the invitation again, reading the handwritten note on the back. Jeongga, I thought you'd want to see how life turns out for people who make good decisions. The wedding will be broadcast live on national television, quite the event. I do hope you can attend, though I understand if your circumstances make that difficult, you know. The casual cruelty of it took her breath away. He knew exactly where she was. He knew she was barely surviving. He knew she had children. His private investigator had made sure of that, sending papers 9 years ago, demanding a paternity test to confirm the children aren't mine before I agree to the separation. The test had confirmed what Jeong already knew. Hyun-woo was the biological father of all 3 children. His response had been to increase her settlement from 0-1 to exactly 0-1, with a note from his lawyer stating, client acknowledges biological connection but accepts no parental responsibility for children conceived through deception. Deception. Because Jeong had somehow deceived him by becoming expectant during their marriage, when they had been trying to conceive. She set down the invitation and looked around her basement apartment, 12 steps from wall to wall. A bathroom so small you had to sit sideways on the toilet. A kitchen that was a hot plate on a folding table. And for people sleeping in a space designed for storage, not human habitation. This was what happened to women who were deemed genetically inferior. This was the life Hyun-woo wanted her to witness: his escape from Iyama. Jian's small voice pulled her back. Are you sick? You look like you did when I was in the hospital. Jeong forced herself to smile, to push down the despair threatening to consume her. No, baby, Iyama is fine. Go back to bed, it's too early for you to be up. As Jian returned to the bedroom, Jian heard the soft sounds of her sons stirring. 8 years old, all 3 of them. Triplets born into poverty because their father had decided their genetic heritage made them worthless. Gunwoo appeared in the doorway first, his serious face so much like Hyun-woo's, it sometimes hurt to look at him. Yama Kyung-ho kicked me again. Can I sleep on the floor? There's no room on the floor, sweetheart. I could sleep under the table. Jeong felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been bending under pressure for 9 years, and finally reached its breaking point. Her son was offering to sleep under a table in a basement in Seoul, one of the wealthiest cities in Asia, and the man who had helped create these children was about to have a wedding broadcast on national television. Jiyoung looked at the hospital bill again. 12 million won. She had exactly 340,000 won in her bank account. The convenience store manager had already told her there were no extra shifts available. The factory had cut her hours because she'd missed work during Gyeon's hospitalization. Then she looked at the wedding invitation. Something shifted in Jiyoung's mind. Not a decision, exactly, but a recognition of what had to happen next. Hyunwoo thought he was inviting a broken woman to witness his triumph. He thought he was sending a message about the natural order of things, about how people with good genetics prosper while people like her remained exactly where they belonged. He had no idea what he'd actually done. He'd given her a deadline. Gunwooya, Jiyoung said, her voice suddenly steady in a way that surprised her. Go wake your brother and sister. I need to talk to all three of you about something very important. As her son disappeared into the bedroom, Jiyoung picked up the wedding invitation one more time and felt 9 years of accumulated desperation, determination, and fierce love crystallize into perfect clarity. She had 3 months until Hyunwoo's wedding. 90 days to transform her life from complete destitution to something Hyunwoo couldn't dismiss or ignore. It was impossible. Completely, utterly impossible. But impossible was better than this basement. Better than her children sleeping under tables. Better than spending the rest of her life proving Hyunwoo right about her worthlessness. Jiyoung stood up and walked to the single window of her basement apartment. Narrow rectangle near the ceiling that showed only the feet of people walking by on the street above. She'd spent 9 years watching the world move past, while she remained underground, invisible, and forgotten. Today, that ended. She had no idea how. She had no plan, no resources, no connections, no advantages of any kind. But she had 3 children, who deserved better than this. And she had 90 days to prove that genetics had nothing to do with worth. The triplets sat cross-legged on the floor of their bedroom, looking up at Jiyoung with the solemn attention that children develop when they've learned too young that life is precarious and their mothers' moods predict whether they'll eat that day. Iyama received an invitation, Jiyoung began, sitting on the edge of the mattress they all shared. To a wedding? Whose wedding? Jiyeon asked. Jiyoung took a deep breath. The triplets knew they had a father somewhere. She'd been honest about that in age-appropriate ways. But she'd never told them the full story of why he left or what he'd said about them. Your father's wedding. The silence that followed was profound. Gunwoo's expression hardened immediately even at 8. He had a protective instinct that made him seem older. Kyung-ho looked confused, while Kyung just seemed curious. We have a father, Jung-ho asked. A real one. You have a biological father, Jiyoung corrected gently. But he chose not to be your appa. There's a difference. Why? Jiyeon's question was simple, but devastating. Jiyoung had rehearsed this conversation in her mind for years, preparing for the day when she'd have to explain why their father had abandoned them. But now, faced with 3 pairs of eyes that looked so much like Hyunwoo's, she found herself telling a version of the truth she hadn't planned. He was afraid, she said slowly. Your father came from a family that believed some people are better than others, because of their bloodline like old kings and nobles. My family had some health issues in our history, and his family thought that made me inferior. When I was expecting you 3, he chose his family's beliefs over our family. That's silly, Gunwoo said flatly. We're not sick, we're fine. You're more than fine, Jiyoung said fiercely. You're brilliant and kind and strong. But your father couldn't see that because he was too focused on following his family's rules. So why did he invite us to his wedding? Jiyeon asked, her mind making logical leaps that constantly surprised Jiyeon. If he doesn't want us, why does he want us there? This was the part Jiyoung had been dreading. How do you explain cruelty to children? He doesn't expect us to actually go, Jiyoung said carefully. He knows we live in difficult circumstances. I think he sent the invitation to remind me that his life turned out well, while mine didn't. To be mean, Gingo's voice was small. Yes, sweetheart, to be mean. Gunwoo stood up with the kind of decisive movement that reminded Jiyoung of Hyunwoo in ways that still surprised her. Then we should go and show him we're not whatever he thinks we are. Jian felt tears threatening again. Baby, it's not that simple. The wedding is in 3 months, and it's going to be a very fancy event with very wealthy people. We don't have the resources for nice clothes, or then we get the resources. Gunwoo interrupted, his 8-year-old logic cutting through her adult complications. You always say there's a solution to every problem if we're smart and work hard enough. This isn't the same as figuring out math homework. Why not? Jian interrupted. And Jian realized all 3 children were looking at her with expressions she'd never seen before, determination, mixed with something that looked like hope. Iyama, you're always telling us that we can be anything we want, Jeongho said. That being poor now doesn't mean being poor forever. So why can't we prove that to our father? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jiang looked at her 3 children, brilliant, resilient, and filled with a belief and possibility that she'd worked so hard to instill in them despite their circumstances. They were asking her to believe in the same principles she'd taught them. And they were right to ask. She'd spent 9 years telling them that education and hard work could overcome any obstacle. She'd made them memorize multiplication tables and English vocabulary, while other basement children played in the streets. She'd saved everyone to buy them books and paper when she couldn't afford proper meals. She'd raised them to believe they could escape this basement and build better lives. Now they were asking her to prove it was true. Okay, Jiang heard herself say, the word coming out before her logical mind could intervene. Okay, we're going to that wedding. The triplets' faces lit up with identical smiles that transformed their serious expressions into pure childish delight. But, Jiang continued, feeling herself being pulled forward by momentum she couldn't control. We're not going to show up looking poor and defeated. If we're going to attend your father's wedding, we're going to arrive as a family that proves everything he believed about us was wrong. How? Jian asked practically. Jiang had no idea, but she stood up and walked to the cardboard box in the corner where she kept important papers, certificates, school records, and one other document she'd been too afraid to use for 9 years. She pulled out a business card, yellowed with age, that someone had pressed into her hand at a hospital 9 years ago, when she'd been crying in the maternity ward. Dr. Min Junghwa Genomic Research Institute. If you ever need help, call me. Your children's genetic profile is remarkable. Jiang had thought the woman was unusual at the time. Some researcher who'd seen the triplets' DNA results during a routine screening and became strangely excited about chromosomal markers that meant nothing to Jiang. But the card had seemed important, so she'd kept it. Now, she dialed the number with shaking fingers, her children watching her with rapt attention. The phone rang 4 times before a professional voice answered. Genomic Research Institute, Dr. Min's office. My name is Park Jiang. Dr. Min gave me her card 9 years ago when my children were born. She said to call if I ever needed help. There was a pause. Please hold. The hold music played for exactly 30 seconds before a woman's voice came on the line, older, but filled with immediate recognition. Park Jiang-si, the mother of the triplets with the FOXP2 variant. I don't know what that means. Where are you right now? Are the children with you? We're at home. They're right here. I'm sending a car to pick you up. What's your address? Jiang gave her basement apartment address, feeling like she was being swept along by a current she didn't understand. Someone will be there in 20 minutes, Dr. Min said, her voice filled with an intensity that was almost frightening. Jiang-si, I've been hoping you'd call for 9 years. Your children's genetic profile isn't just remarkably, it's potentially the most significant discovery in cognitive enhancement genetics in 50 years. And if I'm right about what I've been researching, you might have just solved the biggest problem in Korean biotechnology. The call ended, leaving Jiang standing in her basement apartment with 3 confused children and a growing sense that she'd just set something irreversible in motion. Iyama, Gunwoo asked. What's cognitive enhancement, genetics? I have no idea, Jiang admitted. But I think we're about to find out. 20 minutes later, a black Genesis sedan pulled up outside their basement apartments, so out of place in their neighborhood that people stopped to stare. The driver, a young woman in a crisp suit, bowed respectfully when Jiang answered the door. Park Jiangxi, Dr. Min is waiting for you at the institute. Please, bring the children. As they climbed into the car, the triplets wide-eyed at the leather seats, and the fact that they weren't taking the subway. Jiang felt the basement apartment receding behind them, like a chapter closing. She had no idea what she'd just set in motion by making that phone call. But she had 90 days to transform 3 children and herself from invisible basement dwellers into people who could stand in a room full of souls, elite, and prove that genetic worth had nothing to do with bloodline. The Genesis pulled away from Garaju's industrial streets, heading toward Gangnam and a research institute that would change everything. Behind them, the wedding invitation sat on the cracked linoleum table, its gold lettering catching the fluorescent light like a promise and a threat. The Genomic Research Institute occupied the top 12 floors of a glass tower in Gangnam, its lobby filled with the kind of pristine silence that only exists in places where every surface costs more than most people's annual salary. Jiang held Jian's hand tightly while the twins flanked her on either side. All 4 of them acutely aware of how out of place they looked, the children in clothes from the donation box at their school, Jiang in her convenience store uniform because she'd been too shocked to change. Park Jiangxi, a receptionist, smiled warmly, showing none of the judgment Jiang had expected. Dr. Min is waiting for you in her office, 12th floor. The elevator ride was silent, except for Gyung Ho's whispered wow as they rose above Seoul's skyline, the city spreading out below them in ways they'd never seen from their basement perspective. Dr. Min's office was less an office and more a research command center through walls of screens displaying genetic sequences, brain scans, and data Jian couldn't begin to interpret. The 4th wall was entirely glass, offering a view of Seoul that made their basement apartment feel like it existed on a different planet. Dr. Min herself was younger than Jiang expected, maybe 45, her hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing a lab coat over designer clothes that suggested research paid considerably better than convenience store work. Jiangxi. Dr. Min's face lit up with genuine warmth as she stood. And the triplets, my goodness, they've grown. She knelt down to the children's level with practiced ease. I'm Dr. Min. I met Yuriyama when you were just born, and I've been hoping to see you again for a very long time. Do you know why? All 3 children shook their heads, clustered close to Ji. Because you 3 are special in a way that very few people in the world are special. You have something in your DNA, your genetic code, that makes your brains work differently. Better, actually. Better how? Gunwoo asked, his natural skepticism evident. Dr. Min smiled. That's what I've been trying to figure out for 9 years. And that's why I'm so glad Yuriyama called today. She stood and turned to Jiang. I need to explain something that's going to sound like science fiction, but I promise you, it's real. She gestured to the screens on the wall, where complex genetic sequences were displayed. 9 years ago, when your children were born, routine genetic screening flagged something unusual, a rare variant of the FOXP2 gene combined with modifications to their COMT and BDNF genes. Individually, these variants are interesting. Together, they create what we call a cognitive enhancement cluster. I don't understand, Jiang said, her mind struggling to keep up. Your children's brains can process information and form neural connections at a rate about 3 times faster than normal. They can learn languages, mathematics, pattern recognition, basically anything cognitive at an accelerated pace. It's not that they're smarter, exactly. It's that they can become smarter, faster. Jiang looked at her children, seeing them with new eyes. She'd always known they were bright. They'd taught themselves to read before kindergarten, spoke in complete sentences at 18 months, solved math problems that seemed beyond their age. But she thought that was just because she'd worked so hard to educate them, despite their poverty. Why are you telling us this now? Jiang asked. Dr. Min's expression became serious. Because for the past 5 years, I've been leading a research project funded by the Ministry of Science and Technology. We're trying to understand cognitive enhancement genetics, to develop educational protocols for gifted children. But we've hit a wall. We need actual subjects with these genetic markers to study how their learning develops in real-world conditions. She pulled up a chair and sat, looking directly at you. I need to study your children. With your permission, of course. In return, I can offer you something that I think you need desperately right now. What's that? Resources? The project has a budget of 500 million, one for subject compensation and support services. If you agree to let me work with your children, nothing invasive, just observation, testing, and educational interventions, I can provide you with immediate financial support, housing assistance, educational resources, and access to my network of contacts in Seoul's business and research communities. Jiyoung felt her heart stop. 500 million won. Housing assistance, educational resources. Everything she needed to lift her children out of the basement. Why us? She whispered. There must be other children with these genetic markers. There are exactly 7 documented cases worldwide, Dr. Min interrupted. Your children represent 3 of them. The other 4 are already being studied by research teams in the US and China. You 3 are my only chance to conduct this research in Korea. She leaned forward, her intensity palpable. Jiyoung-si, I've been watching your family from a distance for 9 years through publicly available records. I know you work 2 jobs. I know you live in a basement apartment in Gu. I know your daughter just had emergency surgery that you can't afford to pay for. And I know that despite all of that, your children are thriving academically in ways that confirm everything my research predicts. Dr. Min glanced at the children, then back to Ji. You've been conducting an experiment in cognitive development without realizing it. You've raised these children in adversity, while maintaining high educational standards and emotional support. That's exactly the environment I need to study, not artificial lab conditions, but real-world application of enhanced cognitive abilities. Jiyoung felt Gunhwa's hand slip into hers. Ima, what does she want us to do? She wants to study how your brains work, Jiyoung said softly. To help other children learn better. Will it hurt? Jian asked. No, sweetheart, Dr. Min said gently. Just tests like the ones you take at school, but more interesting. Brain games, puzzles, learning new things and seeing how fast you master them. Like a job? Jung-ho asked. Dr. Min smiled. Exactly like a job. A very important job that happens to pay very, very well. Jiyoung's mind was racing. This was the miracle she'd been praying for, without believing miracles existed. But it was almost too perfect, too convenient. What's the catch? She asked. Dr. Min respected her directness. The catch is that this becomes your life for the next 2 years. The study requires intensive involvement 4 days a week at the institute. Comprehensive educational assessments, regular brain imaging, social development monitoring. Your children will be spending as much time here as they do at school. You'll need to relocate to housing near the institute. Your schedule will be built around this project. And if we say no, then I respect your decision and you walk away with nothing. But Jiyoung-si, Dr. Min's voice softened. I saw your face when I mentioned the compensation. I know what that money means to you. And I genuinely believe this research could help millions of children worldwide learn better and reach their potential. Your children could be part of something historically significant. Jiyoung looked at the triplets, searching their faces for guidance she had no right to expect from a two. What do you think? She asked them. Gunwoo spoke first, his voice serious. Does this mean we don't have to live in the basement anymore? If we do this, yes. Then I want to do it, he said simply. Me too, Jian added. If it helps other kids learn better, that's good, right? I don't want to do brain scans, Jung-ho said quietly. They sound scary. Dr. Min knelt again, her expression gentle. The brain scans are just like taking pictures, Jiyoung-hoya. You lie still in a machine that makes funny noises, and it takes pictures of your brain thinking. No needles, no pain, just pictures. And you can listen to music while it happens. Can I pick the music? Absolutely, Gung-ho considered, then nodded. Okay then. Jiyoung took a deep breath, feeling the weight of this decision pressing on her chest. 9 years of struggling, scraping by, watching her children grow up in poverty despite her best efforts. And now this a chance to change everything in an instant. But at what cost? If I agree to this, Jiyoung said slowly, I need to know that my children's well-being comes first. Not your research, not the funding, not the project timeline. If at any point this starts hurting them psychologically or emotionally, we stop. Immediately, agreed, Dr. Min said without hesitation. I'll put it in the contract. Your children's welfare is the primary concern, period. And the money, I need some of it immediately. My daughter has a 12 million won hospital bill that's overdue. I'll have accounting cut you a check today. Consider it in advance on the first quarter's compensation. Jiang felt something inside her chest beginning to crack, not breaking, but opening. Like a seed that had been dormant underground, finally splitting to let something new emerge. Then we'll do it. Dr. Min's smile was radiant. Welcome to the Genomic Research Institute, Park family. Let me show you what we're going to accomplish together. 6 weeks later, the transformation was so rapid it felt like falling through time. 1 week after signing the contract with Dr. Min, Jiang and the triplets moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in Gangnam, a luxury unit, but compared to their basement, it was a palace. Each child had their own room. There were windows that showed the sky instead of people's feet. The bathroom had a bathtub. The kitchen had a full-size refrigerator that Jiang stood in front of and cried the first time she opened it to find it stocked with actual food. The hospital bill was paid in full, with the hospital administration calling to apologize for the collection notices. The triplets were withdrawn from their overcrowded public school and enrolled in a specialized educational program at the institute, where their days were split between traditional subjects taught by elite tutors and the research protocols Dr. Min had designed, and the protocols were revealing exactly what Dr. Min had predicted the triplets were learning, at a pace that seemed impossible. In 6 weeks, they'd progressed through 2 years of mathematics curriculum. They'd learned conversational English and were starting on Chinese. They'd mastered piano basics well enough to play simple compositions. They'd absorbed history, science, and literature at a rate that left even Dr. Min's team stunned. This is unprecedented, Dr. Min told Jiang during one of their weekly briefing sessions, pulling up charts that showed neural activity patterns during learning tasks. The speed at which they're forming new neural pathways is exactly what the genetic markers predicted, but seeing it in real time is something else entirely. Jiang watched through the observation window as the triplets worked on separate advanced problem-solving tasks, their faces showing intense concentration but also joy. They were happy. For the first time in their lives, they had enough food, enough space, enough mental stimulation to satisfy their hungry minds. You raised them perfectly, Dr. Min said softly, following Jiang's gaze. In that basement, with no resources, you somehow gave them exactly what they needed most: structure, love, and intellectual challenge. Most parents in your situation would have just focused on survival. You focused on their development. I didn't know I was doing anything special, Jiang admitted. I just couldn't let them grow up thinking poverty was the same as being less capable. I needed them to know their circumstances didn't define their potential. And now they get to prove it. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Dr. Min started introducing Jiang to her network researchers. Yes, but also business leaders, policymakers, and social innovators who moved through Gangnam's elite circles with casual confidence. At first, Jiang was terrified of these interactions. She was still the convenience store clerk from Guruju, in her mind, still the woman who'd been called genetically inferior and cast aside. But Dr. Min had a strategy. You're not just the mother of my research subjects, she told Jiang. You're living proof that genetics is only part of the story. Environment, dedication, love, these matter just as much. And Seoul needs to hear that message. Dr. Min started bringing Jiang to speaking engagements, first as an observer, then as a participant, then as a speaker in her own right. Tell them what you did, Dr. Min coached her. Tell them how you raised 3 brilliant children in a basement with nothing but determination and second-hand books. Tell them that genetic potential means nothing without someone who believes in you. The first time Jiang spoke publicly at a women's business forum in Gangnam, she was shaking so hard she could barely hold the microphone. But she told her story. The separation, the basement, the 3 children, the choice between feeding them and educating them, and how she'd found ways to do both, even when it seemed impossible. The applause when she finished was thunderous. Afterward, 3 different people offered her business cards: a venture capitalist interested in educational startups, a nonprofit director working on family poverty initiatives, and a journalist who wanted to feature her story in Seoul Economic Daily. "This is the beginning," Dr. Min said as they left the event. "People are drawn to authentic transformation stories. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're becoming something new right in front of everyone's eyes. That's powerful." But the real transformation wasn't Jiyoung's growing social network or the financial stability or even the triplets. Accelerated learning. The real transformation was internal. One night, about 8 weeks after moving into the Gangnam apartment, Jiyoung found Gunwoo sitting at the dining table at 2 a.m., working on a mathematics problem set that would have challenged high school students. "Why are you up so late, Aja?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I couldn't sleep," he said, not looking up from his work. "I keep thinking about something Dr. Min said today." "What was that?" she said. "Our genetics gave us advantages in learning, but genetics didn't make us kind or brave or hardworking. She said we learned those things from you." Now he looked up, his 8-year-old face far too serious. "Is that true?" Jiyoung felt tears welling up. "I hope so, sweetheart." "Iyama, are we going to that wedding? The one from our biological father?"